I overestimated the patience of manga readers. All too often, by virtue of being in Shonen Jump, uninteresting and ill-thought-out, combat-driven or "I'm 14 and this is deep" stories end up rising to prominence the way familiar titles like Demon Slayer did. It's been enough time now, right? I don't get cancelled for criticizing anything other than Chainsaw Man anymore, do I? Oh well, I don't care. 20 chapters. Recent promising prospect Aliens Area has come to an end after a measly 20 chapters, despite my wholeheartedly believing it would succeed and even preparing to talk about it as the next up-and-coming star. Chapter 1, open quote. The people of Earth don't have the technology to travel to other planets with intelligent life. But if the denizens of other planets possess the technology to come to Earth, they could commit any heinous acts they want, and Earthlings would be unable to do anything to stop them. Lawless zones like that are called Aliens Area. Close quote. That first page does a good job of establishing the concept behind the story, setting readers up for a world under constant threat of alien invasion that people would be helpless to combat with the Earth's limited technology. Gritty, scrappy fights between the underdogs and their overlords, the looming threat of their mortality forcing humans into tough spots, forcing them to reveal their true natures, to live honest lives, for better or worse. That's what I expected. That's not what I got. Though the first chapter is exceptionally well written, following perfectly the Jump formula of instant premise, precise character introduction, and high action ending that seamlessly transitions to the ignition of the plot and the protagonist's motivation, I believe its foil was in the follow-up. Young Tatsumi Tatsunami is our main man, and his rendition of the aforementioned precise character introduction comes in the form of him rejecting a sports scholarship because he doesn't have the time to go to university. Not as the kind of delinquent or alternatively inclined character we've grown accustomed to seeing, but as a single parent of two. Okay, they're just his younger siblings, but thanks to a house fire leaving them all as orphans, he's had to take their upbringing onto himself. Something he does without a second thought as a caring and responsible Oni-chan. Upon his return to his modest home, we get to tick the third of the Jump pilot requirements off the list. Two strange men appear, apparently having awaited his return. They are revealed to be aliens after a valuable implant inserted into his head during the fire all those years ago. Backed into a corner with his family's lives on the line, he activates the ability of his implant for the first time to fend them off just long enough for the secret police in charge of alien control, Foreign Affairs 5, to arrive at the scene of the commotion and handle the rest. As the dust settles, Tatsumi is given a choice. Either have his memory wiped and go on living his miserable life under the threat of attack by aliens after his implant, or make something of his life, join Foreign Affairs 5 and provide better care for the kids. The choice is almost obvious. The next chapter features Tatsumi accompanying his prospective boss to see the work they do before he agrees to anything, and explains the specifics of how FF5, as I'll call it from now on, works, and how they use space tech to keep the aliens in check. He inevitably agrees, as is the shonen fate, and the other team members are introduced in typical fashion. So far, so good. But where did everything go wrong? If it set its story up so well, how is it cancelled so quickly? Despite Aliens Area having the makings of greatness, mangaka Fusai Naba perhaps made the same mistake as I that I've yet to explain. He expected patience. Patience he did not receive. Shonen Jump is cutthroat. For every Dragon Ball, Jujutsu Kaisen, or One Piece, there are several dozen titles that barely get a dozen chapters. If a story fails to compete well in popularity against the pre-existing titans, it gets the axe despite the odds being stacked against it, and that's why any Jump manga that's able to remain in serialization for a reasonable length of time inevitably becomes a hit of the caliber of The Promised Neverland or Dr. Stone at least. Where Aliens Area failed was its world building and character development. Not that they were bad per se, but that they were poorly handled. And by that I mean it attempted to do that at all. Following the by-the-book beginning, Aliens Area becomes little more than a slice of life for a handful of chapters. It follows the day-to-day dealings of FF5, how they're structured, the personalities of some of the characters, and procedures for dealing with the common problems the organization faces. In concept, this was a logical follow-up, but in practice it was poorly executed. Tatsumi spends time as a farmer for team building, hands aliens parking tickets for where they leave their spaceships, and he learns how to use contact lenses as his tool of choice because he's already a decent fighter thanks to his implant. These events take up multiple consecutive chapters, all while the revolving door of new characters keeps spinning. And the occasional fight is made hard to enjoy by the visually disconcerting powers used and uninteresting characters involved. This probably all contributed to viewership diminishing greatly, which I can't say comes as a surprise to me considering I'd personally put it on hold to wait for it to get good not long before it got the boot. Aliens Area failed to remain compelling while delivering vital plot and setting information or carrying out relevant character progression, and that was ultimately its undoing. Now, why did I, despite these glaring flaws, still have faith in its potential? Well, as much as I have played up the importance of that bad stint in the downfall of Aliens Area, there were likely only about 5 chapters, give or take, during which the readers must have lost interest, and the manga rectified its mistakes with a stretch of writing and execution that could be called powerful by the standards of just about any manga out there. Villains almost as decisive as the Jump editorial department, storytelling with single-minded focus on progression, and deliberate character interactions between only the relevant cast all blended together for the kind of gripping story you could tell was being put together by an extremely capable mangaka, showed me that this was the work of someone determined to save their series. Someone who'd cast aside whatever delusions led them to believe they'd be allowed to keep going till they got to the good parts. Unfortunately, it all came too late. That's the lesson to be learned not only by Naba, but to be understood by all fans of manga who feel that all too often series with promise are being ripped from the pages. Aliens Area didn't get good until everyone stopped looking or caring enough about what would happen to it. It wasn't allowed to take the patient approach and let us fall in love with the world or characters the way manga used to back in the day, and that might be why your favorite series is next. Because the writer wants to share the details, the aspects they love about it. That might be why we feel everything is unoriginal and generic these days. If you aren't feeding into what the teenage boys reading the most manga want to see, you just aren't going to be able to stick around. It's pretty darn sad. But not as sad as the fact that you watched this far and were about to leave without hitting the like and sub buttons. Shame on you, tell a friend. That was episode 2 of the Untold Sagas, Ken-chan signing out.